This is Shirley here with Jupitalis, and as the moon approaches Spica, it's time to call on Spica, and Venus approaches Uranus. So it's Epiphany's time, and all of that is sextiling Saturn Neptune, which is something that brought back historical movies. And of course, what better is than to watch the Saturn Neptune conjunction in the 1990s documentary. This is the fall of the Soviet Union. And I want to paint to you a Kundalini perspective of that. So, when it comes to birthing, when it comes to the orgasm of conception and willing consent, the voice of the participants matters a lot, both in the ability to reach an orgasm and the emotional release, but also upon birthing. And so that pertains to home labor and the need to bridge technology and home labor. But the orgasm is basically kind of the body's preparation for orgasmic birth. And a lot of people that actually are towards birth are actually having sex before the birthing to accelerate the birthing, right? So when you think about people actually having sex and actually vocalizing themselves, and as a person who worked in the sex positive, both self-pleasure industry, but also and when I say that, I mean that kind of all those jade eggs stuff, workshops and stuff like that, because that can go misconstrued. And we had a lot of people trying to silence our industries by trying to normalize trafficking, which is antithetical to Kundalini rise, orgasm, birthing, and so on, and healthy bodily fluids and healthy fertility fluids, which is quite important to conception. Now that Jupiter is in Cancer, of course, okay, the seed in the womb, very simply put, okay, and Venus is still in Taurus. When we talk about the masses of people not really having willingly consensual sex, we had deterioration. Now we see that in the West, where I must say it, this is the challenge growth for the 2030. They gotta build their 15-minute city a little bit more spacious. But it is what it is. And by the way, also when we talk about mental and physical health and sense of embodiment, that pertains to gay sex, okay? So that pertains to LGBTQ. And when it comes to the housing situation, people were crammed into cities where they had to put the carpets, the Soviet carpets on the walls, were to muffle the sounds of people. So you understand it became less and less possible. One could say, oh, because of the housing situation, people could not really vocalize themselves. Opposite. Because first came the lack of willing consent, the lack of ability to express the voice, the lack of ability to say yes, no, and maybe. For the common person, in COVID, we saw that before that, everybody spoke to their yoni, to their vagina, and then they spoke to their penis, and then they began to awaken, and then boom, satanic ritual abuse. All the mafiosi with the hand gestures, nobody actually orgasms. It's all misplaced arousal, and they try to get into the nervous system to bring something that looks like the water, but it ain't. So, And they do that to get real estate and assets that are about to go kaput, which is exactly what happened in the Soviet Union. And so people were living crumped up with each other with carpets on the wall. It wasn't so accepted to have an orgasm vocally. And what can we do that the voice is kind of important to the depth of the orgasm, especially when it comes to conception? That further affected the ability to give birth and have a happy upbringing. And eventually, as people were muffled up in what looks like an ideal communion, people meet each other and so on. Oh, they just had to apply for the housing crisis. No, listen to Elvira. Listen to Elvira. She has grown up in Soviet Russia. She talks about it, but she doesn't talk about the sex part. She talks about other things, yes. When it comes to Kundalini rise, then you understand things from the vantage point where people never vocalize themselves to begin with, and this is go both in and out of bed. And so that of course affects the ability to have orgasmic birth. Now this is not to annihilate people's unhappy birthing experiences or the need to have IVF, or not at all. Okay, I'm just going to the basics now, because those basics still need to be there. And our design of habitat has to be accommodating for life. Right now it isn't. Same as 1990, it wasn't. And then those entire structures that couldn't accommodate for life dissolved. And so this is exactly Saturn Neptune, okay? Outdated structures dissolve. And in those situations, it's a situation where you don't know what's next. It's not that you know what will be. But this situation is outdated. This situation has served its course. Now, the same is happening in the West right now. The absolute same thing. People don't have the ability to say yes, no, and maybe. Not only that, the incessant, what people talk about, spiritual warfare, whether the Gateway Project awakening of the people that with the pink fluoride in the schools, and then at the same time the incessant desire to sovereignty. Lilith in Scorpio talks about sexual sovereignty. Uranus Taurus and Venus conjuncting Uranus Taurus, sextile in Jupiter, sextiling Saturn Neptune, with Jupiter in Cancer, is a mass awakening. By the way, congratulations to the Piscinis. So they have been trying for quite some time, and yeah, there's a congratulation there, which was notified just, I think it was yesterday. Okay, Venus applying to Uranus and so on. So those are the fertility stuff. Even when it comes about IVF, and it's still the fertility stuff. Okay, it's true. So, yeah, for those who've been watching the Piscinis, the fascinating couple. She's American, he's Italian, and they're building a family. But when it comes to the West, going back to the West, many people have come to the situation that the yes, no, and maybe didn't matter, And then we began to have the antithesis. So it was the Great Resignation. It was the Jade Egg Mass Awakening. It was all these things that later, the things that it went in kind of, people began to awaken the sexual energy, which correlates to our identity. So there was remembrance. And so people began to, oh, pink fluoride. What were those weird things that happened in school? And people learned with Neptune in Pisces to manifest. And then it was kind of like hijacked. And they said, wait, what the fuck is that? I learned how to manifest. Then something weird came up. I learned how to reconnect with my sexual energy. Then those dumbfuckery, spiritual dumbfuckeries, where every mental health practitioner talks to you in language of the 18th century, where there are literally courses during COVID to have shared dreams, tantric, astral sex, and none of these folks seems to know about that. Like, really? 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 Doesn't make sense. And then people say, well, I want me back, right? So what we see with all these fertility aspects, and Venus will travel through Gemini and then go to Cancer. We're going to have the Venus, Moon, Jupiter conjunction in Cancer. Astrologers has this on the calendar. They are building for that for at least 2-3 years. This is going to be the megalithic baby boom. And people want sovereignty. People want orgasmic birth. They know that it exists. People want tantric sex with their partner. People want the partner. Okay? People want sovereignty. Sovereign relation. A sovereign being with a sovereign being. And so with Neptune, they begin to manifest that. And with the Saturn Neptune, it really is from a Kundalini standpoint, the outdated structure. And what are the current outdated structure against sovereignty? MK Ultra. Why do they do that? Real estate. What do they ritual abuse? That's why your manifestation been off. That's why you couldn't water since Jupiter in Pisces or something. That's why your divine counterpart haven't appeared yet. They're busy fighting spiritual warfare too. And masses of people already know the good stuff because Neptune has been in Pisces before Saturn, and now it's in Aries because everybody knows that Pluto in Aquarius, is kind of like people don't want they don't want cult-like anything anymore. And Uranus not only has been in Aries, with the Uranus Aries in Aries squaring Pluto, that was the Me Too. Me Too was not about sexual harassment. If you've seen only the hashtag Me Too, you've seen the social engineering Me Too. You haven't seen the Me Too. It was about sexual sovereignty. The real Me Too was the people saying, I want the sex that I enjoy as well, not on the account of somebody else, It was a fraction of a second before Uranus ingressed into self-pleasure May Taurus. And it's not one person and it's not in one country. It is mega tsunami of people that have been frustrated enough, manifesting longing, feeling helpless enough to long for authentically aware enough that there is more to life than this, and they want the destruction of outdated patterns that stand in the way of life. Saturn Neptune, and destruction is a different word, but the dissolution, the dissolving of these structures. This is what Saturn does in Neptune. The dissolving, it's basically the dissolving of deed. Into remembrance, into the I am. Because you cannot have a we are without the I am. We already learned that in the 1990s. But the I am, the next sign to Aries is Taurus, and Taurus is the voice. Then Gemini is the opinion. Okay, the head of the baby is born. Then what happens? Wah, 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 wah. Okay, then it learns to speak. And if we allow it to tell the truth, it will continue to do so and also express its emotional needs. Begin to hug. Okay, what do? Gemini is the hands, is the limbs, but particularly the hands. Okay, Cancer is the hug. Aries is the heart. Leo is the heart. Virgo is what happened when we open our hearts, you know. It's not a Virgo anymore. Libra is what happened afterwards. We need to have power, balance, and equity. Taurus is what happens after that Kundalini rise. When people learn how to actually enjoy sensuality but in today's society we keep thinking about Scorpio as this deep power relation, this transmutation, this that. Body, heart, mind, and soul orgasm. That's what Scorpio is. If that becomes anything malefic, it has to do with the nature of the state of the art. It needs to be transmuted. In Sagittarius, people can become a little bit of zealots. Because they want to travel, they want to this, they want to that. And then there is Capricorn, which is kind of like the climbing of the mountain. Take it wherever you want to. And Aquarius is ideas, community, the mass awakening. Into Pisces, which is both the water of preconception and the dissolution of literally everything that has a concept to it. So this is if the concept is the Jupiter Sagittarius, okay, that there's the opinion that is Gemini, and then there is the concept that is Sagittarius. In Pisces, the concept dissolves and it forms at the same time. Then we have the head of the baby again. But for these cycles for people to actually be born, okay, the I am has to be, the expression of the yes, no, and maybe has to be Think about the opposition of Aries, it's Libra. What are Librans known for? Running between not really saying anything to completely outbursting. I have an 8th house Libra. I know that. I went from, 2017, not being able, everybody tell me if you won't talk about the trauma, you won't be able to heal. I'm like, not able to, trying to work with lights, with this, with that, with whatever, to, until I speak, everybody's like, oh, but write that to your diary, but this, but that doesn't work like that. Now, not that the fact that we are not currently situated, and this is why Westerners don't have actual housing. And what happens when they don't? It crosses a threshold, or it comes to dissolve. What is there actually to dissolve? Because there are houses in the US. Houses exist. So why aren't people housed? What's happening between there? If the US kind of looks like Soviet Russia, then that structure comes to dissolve. Now the US is the Allied nations, and the Allied nations go from Washington to Shanghai. That's the Saturn Neptune in the world degree, 0 degree Aries. It's both the attempt to enslave the entirety of humanity and the mass awakening of people longing to, come on, are we rid of those things that get at our income, get at our business, get at our housing structure, get at our orgasms, get at our relationships, get at our ability to form an identity and express ourselves. And it's not about individualism. It's about the actual, well, happily balanced sense of self, sense of community, which is exactly the time. And it's not feminists anymore. It's not about feminism. There's nothing. Uranus is about to go into Gemini. It's not about feminism. Feminism from there on is only going to be about the juristic stuff and contractual stuff. It's not about feminism. It is about an individual balance between the individual to the society. Civil society, Gemini, and worldly society, Aquarius, or worldly communities, Aquarius. And Aquarius, Aries, and Gemini are in a basic style. They're harmonizing. Now, if people think that they can do that without, we don't have to be talking about the feminine, but we cannot have the masculine well balanced without a feminine holding space for it, whichever form, also in gay relationships. And yet even those gay relationships, when they go through humiliation rites, even it begins with men and themselves. Patriarchal society, it begins with men and themselves. It is the ability to be an authentic person, which necessitate remembrance, saying yes, no, and maybe, acting on our own inner will, and the emotional and psychic intelligence to understand who we are and what we want. It takes all of that to be a woman. It takes all of that to be a man. It takes all of that to be whichever gender. Uranus in Taurus is the last bit before Gemini, where we are reminded that the structures of our living should accommodate for sovereign I am, and be able to have conception. Look at this beautiful Jupiter in Cancer this year. This year we were going to have the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and this year is not just 2025 but also 2026. Going from the square to the trine. Time to set structures in stone. Okay, Saturn ruling over Pluto in Aquarius, architecture. And even the eclipses are in friction with the 2030. By the way, I have Rahu in Gemini. I have Rahu in the 50-minute cities, okay? And this is a growth, it's a growth structure, because I've been living most of my life in my room, one room apartment, one room in another people's apartment, and you know, everybody asks why you're single. Try to have an orgasm in that place. Even when you work on actually releasing your energy through the voice, people think you're running a brothel or something. But I actually lived next to a brothel. There was a brothel in my building. Not only did I not hear the girls, I also didn't see them. And I just we usually would put like the clothes and stuff that we don't need next to the garbage can so people can take that. And so two young men took all the clothes, and I thought, oh, fantastic, somebody's going to enjoy that. One night they come back with a cab and they say, you know, they weren't asking, they say, you know, there's a brothel here. Fortunately, they were kind to me. And he says, you know, every night I come here with different men. And I made 1 + 1. I was like, I never seen the girl. And so this is the thing, when people can't hear an orgasm and can't hear orgasmic birth, and if they live too crumped together that they need a carpet so they wouldn't hear the other neighbors stirring the tea, it's genuine, like they can't, okay? So the infrastructure, which means the housing and the real estate that supports only trafficking, which negates life, is about to be destroyed. Hoorah! It's not gonna look nice on paper. It's not gonna look nice on paper. It's also because what people go to demonstrate about. Okay, have you ever seen a huge demonstration of people screaming out, hey, we need architecture that allows for an orgasm to be? Nah, usually it's labor rights or bring back the kidnapped people. How did we even get to the point where there are kidnapped people? Oh, the people, first there were the people that living cramped up in apartments trying to manage with the export conditions for the agriculture. Then they began trafficking and kidnapping other people because they needed to support their families. And then 7th of October, the world, it's not that the world didn't believe Israel that there were all these ritual abuses in 7th of October. It's just that they're invested in that, and the thing that now they're getting yield, the yield they're getting is called colonialism. That being said, I was absolutely humbled at how the living situation, and you think about it, growing with this dissonance. You think, like really, how many people been growing in that dissonance? It's not socially acceptable to have an orgasm. It's not socially acceptable. How much of our dating life is affected by that, but also how much of our, ability to support ourselves and our family. This is, if we cannot be, then how are we going to have the energy of abundance? And I'm talking about the energy of abundance. I know I've been talking about the missing assets in Monaco. We call it the assets in Monaco transit. But do you really think that the people come there and they have this serene life? They, if it's true what they say, they don't look each other in the eyes, because that's considered asking. You really think those people, that traffic people, that this, that, they sit in an apartment in Monaco and then they just meditate and hear the birds and the nervous breakdowns that nobody even knows, because they were born into ritual abuse. And even if they sell the Ferrari, go recover from all those rituals. I have a karmic rope with Ferrari, the Rolls Royce. I said what I said. Uranus opposition for me is gonna be the Rolls Royce transit. Anyway, if I try to understand this axis of eclipses, the challenges 2030 is that Gemini rules small places. Think about it, you just move out of the house, you kind of move into a student apartment. Now in Uganda, by the way, and I don't know what is going on like to deeper level, but when a teenager becomes a teenager, they begin to build their own house. It's nothing too impressive, but it is spacious enough so that they can live in their own house, and people help them to build it, and they build it themselves with the help of the people. What happens in when you're a teenager? I mean, you begin to you begin to orgasm. Okay, so our housing situation is not even accommodating for orgasm, let alone birth. Now what's about to be? Saturn is ingressing to meet Neptune. In the world degree, Aries is a sign of real estate. Laser focused on having better sex for a better world. Now, this is Uranus on 29-degree Taurus. It's the last call. Because in Gemini, we're going to be fighting for our rights, and none of us is going to say what it's about. In Taurus, we kind of do. In a world where you live next to a brothel, you never see the people, you never hear the people, but the birth is done in a place that is almost upside down to how birthing actually goes. the real estate is not going to hold for a lot. Now, people usually live in houses. If they don't, they live in real estate. Even if that real estate is the street, they live in real estate. Aries is the sign of the individual. Okay? Those outdated structures tend to go with the people. The world degree is the world degree.